Hi, hello, salut, bonjour. I hope you're doing very well from wherever you're watching at this moment. As always, it's a privilege to have you connect as we continue to shed light on what's happening in the Republic of Cameroon, especially following the presidential elections that took place on October 12th. But first, today, I want to do something unique. I want to thank you all for your continuous contributions, your comments, subscription, and how you share the content. Your continuous engagement is what helps to grow a platform like this. And I understand that some of you have requested that you see videos of these different gruesome incidences that we described. However, I also want to caution you that there are legal implications when we show videos of minors and people that are in very compromising situations, some of which are bloody. And we do understand that other platforms have that kind of content, and it's very tricky for us to bring that to you at this moment. In other cases, I do take into consideration copyright concerns, in as much as I have sources on the ground that bring the information and verify that it's factual. We also are mindful that some of the details or the videos that we do have may not be that which we can publicly share with you on this platform. However, given the sensitivity surrounding the content that in some cases could be full of gore and blood, in other cases can involve minors and show people in very demeaning circumstances, which would need to be vetted and sometimes even blurred because you may not even see much in such videos. We do know that there are other publicly shared content that we can broadcast. However, we're working with a legal team to make sure that everything we show you should not affect the platform in the future. So we want to be careful about that, but be mindful, be rest assured that everything we're telling you, everything we're reporting is factual, is verified, and they're reputable sources. And just as you've heard from the threatening voice of the Minister of Territorial Administration in Cameroon, threatening all content creators, and some of them have even been arrested because they try to capture real life videos. So on that note, I'll just crave your indulgence to bear with me as I continue to navigate these very tricky waters that have to do with creating content that can involve videos from the ground. And for those of you who know me personally or have followed my other different platforms, you have seen that in 2018, I did produce a full-on show and different content to show you what was happening in Cameroon post-elections, and even with the crisis in the Northwest and the Southwest region. In the near future, I'll repurpose that content and broadcast it for you to see. I understand the need for that kind of production value. The only difference is that this 2025 election cycle is a very tricky one in the history of Cameroon, and therefore it will be important to protect even those that are harvesting information on the ground, those that are capturing footages on the ground. Yes, some of it you may see it on people's private platforms on whatever. It could be TikTok, it could be Instagram or Facebook or X or Twitter as they call it. But we just have to be mindful that we are the target. Any of us that come out to speak and show you content and tell you things the way they are, we are the target, and you should understand that. So it's very tricky, and as you can tell, it's an expensive venture to be able to curate first-hand information verified from reputable sources and bring it to you. We also do understand that, yes, not everybody has the resources to support this kind of work, but from the ground up, I'm doing it free. Not paid by anyone. I'm just making sure that I can provide reliable and verifiable content to you on a daily basis as much as I can. And also keep in mind that, yes, it's important if you can support, fine, I appreciate that. But from the get-go, it's open and it's free for everyone to watch in every place around the world. So thanks to YouTube for creating this opportunity where people can actually share knowledge and share valuable information about things, especially as important as this. Having said that, I want to thank you again for your continuous support and for subscribing, for sharing the content in your circles, and for continuously commenting and sharing your own thoughts and ideas. We appreciate it, and we hope you do understand why things are the way they are for the moment. Now, let's move on to the business of the day. There's so many things happening on the continent as we speak. Our hearts go out to our brothers and sisters in Tanzania. Their case is also rising tension. It's so sad to see that as of now, there are reports of over 700 people killed. 700 people plus killed. Yeah, it's sad. John Kitoka was able to confirm that with another media organization, France 24, where he's clearly saying, he's a chairperson, I think, for the opposition, and he's stating that over 700 people have been killed so far because of the same election cycle, the same situations we're decrying in Cameroon. How sad it is to see in Africa that leaders that are unpopular with their people don't want to step aside. It's sad to see that President Hassan is staying in office despite this amount of bloodshed. And the reports also suggesting that she may have fled the country with an helicopter. We'll be confirming that in the days ahead. But right now, we take you back to Cameroon. And just so you know, the continent is bleeding. Because in Cameroon, as we speak, Issa Tchiroma Bakary has issued 3 important statements in the last 12 hours. The first of which was a text where he mentions clearly that his private cook and 2 members of his family were abducted by elements of the Yaoundé regime. And that is so sad to see that that is the way they've decided to play the game, by intimidating, arresting arbitrarily, and also torturing people, especially those that are close to him. And in which he was thanking the forces of law and order of the military that are loyal. He calls them loyalists, who have been responsible to protect him and take him to a safe place. And we can talk about the second message from Issa Tchiroma Bakary, where he is calling on all those that have been arbitrarily arrested to be released immediately with immediate effect. And he continues to tell them that they would not back down. The people have no more fear, because they're the people of resistance and they will stand for justice. And then follow up now with a voice message that he was able to address Cameroonians both in English and French, and was able to articulate the very basis of this crisis. And he started with the Constitutional Council's proclamation of incumbent Paul Biya, and where he mentions that it's a sad thing to see that fabricated elections results were read, and therefore pushing the people to their end. And all the peaceful protests that was taking place around the country was met with crackdown and arbitrary arrests, torture, and detentions. And he decried all of that and mentions that he is calling on all Cameroonians, everywhere they find themselves on the national territory, to observe a 3-day inclusive ghost town where no activity, no movement should take place in public, and everybody should stay put and stay at home. And that would be in response to the death of so many Cameroonians in the hands of what he calls a militia that has been put in place to kill Cameroonians, because all they are seeking for is transparency and justice. And he goes on to enumerate a couple of things. And in the same vein, he's also alerting the international community and the world to see for themselves what is happening in Cameroon. And he goes on to outline the fact that the people are resilient and they will stand. And he himself, he says, he would never betray the people and he will fight for their victory together. Those are very powerful words from a man who has now been seen as a statesman, a revolutionary, somebody who wants to transform Cameroon, who wants to take Cameroon from the clutches of the regime in Yaoundé. He wants to take Cameroon away from the 43-year-old mandate that has plunged Cameroon into despair. And we can also inform you that Issa Tchiroma Bakary's message is coming at a time when, just this Friday alone around the country, some cities like in Maroua, Bafoussam, and other parts of Douala, there's no activity. You know, the streets were deserted. People woke up this morning with some quiet. It seems as if even before the message of the ghost town, people are already feeling in the air that it's time to stay home and stay put. And we should also inform you that the National Assembly of Cameroon has been convened to meet on November 3rd, 2025, which is considered to be the oath-taking or the swearing-in ceremony for the incumbent. And that is not sitting well with many analysts across the country and even in the diaspora, because we'll do an in-depth analysis as to what are the options that are left for Issa Tchiroma Bakary under this tense climate. We will tell you about the 3 schools of thought, what they say about his next moves, and he himself called it the third plan. However, let's talk about what's going on in the different parts of the country. We can also tell you that in Douala, video has surfaced of a leader of the Muslim community or people that are coming from the northern region in New Bell, who is decrying the fact that in District 2 in Douala, called Douala Deuxième, overnight, he accuses members of the city council of Douala Deuxième to have burned down and destroyed the shops of people that are considered origins of the northern region of Cameroon. Again, making allusion to people that come from Issa Tchiroma Bakary's area, as well as those that come from the west region of Cameroon, that their shops were destroyed, and it's sad to see that, and he's calling on the forces of law and order to take action against those perpetrators. We can also report about the controversy surrounding the congratulatory note that is said to have come from Vladimir Putin of Russia to his counterpart, President Paul Biya of Cameroon. The letter seems to have been signed, and what they say, signed in Yaoundé, which is strange that a letter that's supposed to be signed in Moscow says it was signed in Yaoundé. And therefore, there's been so much controversy. And of course, you can expect that there's been debate around the veracity and the source of that particular letter. Opposition figures are accusing the regime of trying to show some credit and legitimacy to the victory call or the victory proclamation of their candidate. And furthermore, we can also highlight that in Issa Tchiroma Bakary's voice message, he made it clear that it's very, very concerning to see that the president of the Constitutional Council was toasting and celebrating with champagne that he had secured the victory of the CPDM candidate, which again, like we said, will constitute part of our in-depth analysis shortly. So we move on to confirm to you that in Betwa, the mayor is going around calling on people to open their shops and continue as if business as usual. And it's almost like a threat to the population. We see the same tactics being deployed in other parts of Douala, where some citizens have come out with peace plans. They are said to have been mobilized by some of the surrogates of the CPDM in that area to push people to go back and open their stores and do business. And they're saying, open your stores, open your bars. And that is what the people woke up in some parts of Douala to experience this morning on Friday. And we can also talk about the decision by Yaoundé authorities to forbid any form of peaceful protest or march for the support of Professor Abaoyono at SOA, Yaoundé 2, University of Yaoundé 2. It is reported that there was a flyer going out calling for people to come out and march in support, to show support that he should be released, because his only crime is that he went to visit Issa Tchiroma Bakary in Garoua and he was asked to return. He landed and was asked to return. And a few days later, he had a press conference, or not a press conference, he spoke to the press, one of the media organizations known as Vox Africa, where he expressed his concern and also was able to state clearly that Issa Tchiroma Bakary won these elections hands down, and they know it, and therefore he's working towards some form of mediation. He was going to Garoua to meet Issa Tchiroma Bakary, what they call their president-elect, and therefore he has no reason to feel threatened in his own country. And we do know that moments after, a few days after, he was arrested. And as you know, the same thing happened to Professor Mesanga Nyamding, who calls himself a Biyaist, which is a term for those who blame everybody except Paul Biya. That's the easiest way I can describe it. He went to Garoua to say he wants to go and meet Issa Tchiroma Bakary. As soon as he landed in Garoua, he was asked to make a U-turn. They didn't even allow him to land. They said orders came from above. And he expressed his frustration in the video that he did on his way back, where he was very concerned about the fate of the country. And when he was interviewed later on, he spoke in a very calculated manner. We do know Professor Mesanga Nyamding to be very vocal, but in that particular interview, he was saying that security forces said they had more information, so it's for security reasons, and that's why they're asking him to return, that orders came from above. However, in the same message, Professor Mesanga Nyamding is heard to be carefully crafting his words. He's talking about analyzing the situation as a political scientist, and therefore he's seeing that there's some kind of tension and chaos, and he believes that Issa Tchiroma Bakary is somebody who can even go to the extent of taking his own life if he's supposed to be captured, that he's never going to allow himself to be captured a second time and be tortured. And those are the words of Professor Mesanganyamdi. Those are his thoughts, and he expressed them in that particular clip. And so as tensions continue to rise, we can also update you about the state of health of Issa Ekane, who is an important figure in this particular movement. He's been an important figure since the 90s, and up to date, he's been working on the side of the opposition because he's championing change. He's a strong voice because it's thanks to him and his team of the Union pour le Changement, the UPC 2025 movement, that Issa Tchiroma Bakary may have just gathered the momentum to put the Cameroonian people on the path to change. And Issa Ekane, he was the person that endorsed Professor Maurice Kamto, whose candidacy was dismissed by the Constitutional Council in August this year. And he later on strategized again and was able to identify Issa Tchiroma Bakary, or let's just say it was easy because Issa Tchiroma Bakary made it easy for them by also aligning with the conditions that they provided. And therefore, Issa Tchiroma Bakary became the flag bearer of the Union pour le Changement. And it's unfortunate that Cameroonians woke up to rumors of his death, which is a very sad thing that should never happen. Thankfully, they have been disproven because part of the legal team came out and said clearly that they have met with him and he's going through some treatment and being taken care of, because even prior to his arrest, he had already been suffering from health issues, and they do hope that the people that are keeping him at this very special gendarmerie unit should take care of him to the point where he gets back to good health, because it's sad that at the moment where he needs his family by his side, he's instead being monitored by elements of the gendarmerie, which doesn't make a situation good for someone to recover, especially if you're dealing with health issues. And those are some of the major highlights of events happening across the country in Cameroon, among the so many that have taken place within the last 24-48 hours. The curfews are still in place, the bans are still in place, the threats are still in place, the arrests are still taking place. Some of the streets are quieter. There are not many protests and people marching, although in Garoua, today, Friday, there was also a march and protest of people going on the street and continue to proclaim Issa Tchiroma Bakary their leader and trying to reclaim their victory. We know that arrests are still continuing. We also have reports of one of the gendarmerie officers being dismissed, reprimanded for releasing some of the unlawful arrests where you have youth and young people. And that's why it's even hard for some of us to show these videos where you had young people under the rain being tortured in their numbers, almost 100 and more. And you hear the voice of an officer saying to them, you are the ones that continue to chant Issa Tchiroma Bakary. Can you chant it again? Like in a threatening voice. And it's so sad to see some of these images and look at the young people. And as we always told you before, Cameroon has a youthful population. You know, the youth constitute about 65 to 70% of the population. That is, if you go up to 30 years of age, 30 years and below constitute at least 70% or 75% of the population. So they are being governed by a handful, as independent observers have been able to prove, that it's just a handful of a clique that is governing the country, ruling the country by decree and brutality and impunity. And so we shall continue to monitor the situation and bring you fresh information as soon as possible. For now, though, let's dive deep into our analysis as we complete this editorial. What is left for Issa Tchiroma Bakary to do? We do know that the Constitutional Council has proclaimed the incumbent Paul Biya as the winner. However, results from the polling station, as published by Issa Tchiroma Bakary and his team, as well as verified information coming from the ground and people posting results from different polling stations online, show that the people sided with Issa Tchiroma Bakary and therefore calling to question those results. And now the question is, what is left for Issa Tchiroma Bakary to do? Because the National Assembly is going to be sitting on Monday, November 3rd, to do a swearing-in ceremony for President Biya. In the meantime, we have three different schools of thought that have emerged. The first school of thought of legal luminaries think that Issa Tchiroma Bakary should move fast and take an oath of office, wherein he will be able to show that he is a legitimate president and the president that the people have chosen. Because Article 2 of the Constitution gives sovereignty to the people, states clearly that national sovereignty resides with the people. and therefore they can take back their sovereignty, especially when the Constitutional Council is said to be compromised and corrupt. And proof is in the fact that moments after the proclamation of results by the Constitutional Council, the president, Clement Atangana, was seen in a video toasting to champagne and clearly saying that they are happy because him, their father, was responsible to make sure that their candidate wins this election. And so the first school of thought is pointing to this kind of blatant evidence to show that the Constitutional Council is compromised, and therefore that proclamation is questionable. And they also cite regional cases where you could see in the Gambia the case of Adama Barrow, who was able to take an oath of office in Senegal because of the security concerns in the country, being an opposition. Therefore, that singular act of taking the oath of office by Adama Barrow in Senegal was able to show the international community who is a true legitimate leader of the Gambia. And that's how he was able to return and assume office after Yahya Jammeh fled and took refuge in Equatorial Guinea. And you can clearly see that there is precedence within the continent of Africa. Although one would have to wonder, why must it be so? Why must it be like this for transition to happen in some African countries? We can cite the case of Kenya with Raila Odinga, who is of blessed memory now. May his soul rest in peace. He went through the same ordeal in 2017 with Uhuru Kenyatta. Although they ended up shaking hands, but the country lost a lot of men and women, children alike, because of the same old story where people don't want to accept defeat and leave office peacefully. And some supporters of Raila Odinga, as well as independent observers, have also decried the fact that Raila Odinga would have been alive today had that transition just occurred peacefully and he was able to rule the country and do the exact things that he promised to do for the people of Kenya. That takes us back to the case of Issa Tchiroma Bakary, who has also openly said that he has a failing health situation and he's monitoring his health every single day, but he knows that he can deliver within a 3 to 5 year mandate and help to put the country on track. And with this amount of tension and pressure, especially with all this unrest and threats to arrest Issa Tchiroma Bakary, one continues to fear for his well-being and his life, just like the cases of Anissa Ikane, because the conditions under which opposition leaders in Cameroon continue to do their work is so unbearable. And that is why it is almost like to say that the regime in place is using all kinds of repressive tactics to make sure that people are scared, they live under terror and fear, and therefore refrain from even talking about governance or politics, or even trying to look deep into what's going on in government circles when there's embezzlement and corruption and all kinds of nasty things taking place in the same premises and offices of those that are supposed to be upholding the state, the nation of Cameroon. And it's sad that these are some of the tactics that have been put in place for the last 4 decades in the attempt to promote what they call la conservation du pouvoir, to impoverish the people, keep them in captivity, so that they start doubting themselves and doubting their abilities and just lay low and be silent and say they want peace. And that takes us to the second school of thought, who believe that, well, maybe 7 years will just pass by, 7 years will just go by so fast. And we can even cite someone like Jean de Dieu Momo, who was supposed to be an opposition candidate. Yes, he might say Issa Tchiroma Bakary did the same thing. He came into the government. But the only difference is that when you see the way someone like Jean de Dieu Momo moves, when you see the way he talks, when you see the way he does his things, it tells you that he's somebody who has really gone deep into the mindset of the regime. For him to say to Cameroonians who have been suffering that they should just be patient, 7 years will just go by fast, it's more than an insult to the families who are suffering and going through all kinds of repression and oppression, and even to the memory of those who have lost their lives because of the different struggles just to seek democracy. Whereas when he was part of the opposition, there were clips of all the things he said against the regime. Yes, he can point to Issa Tchiroma Bakary and say he did same. But the difference is that Issa Tchiroma Bakary has come out, asked for forgiveness, and is ready to do an overturn. And it's sad to see that somebody like a Deputy Minister of Justice, who was once an opposition leader, who even still claims that he's part of a group called G20, whatever that means. Because, again, that's why a famous French journalist was able to say there's no opposition in Cameroon, that the opposition in Cameroon is the most stupid opposition ever. And which is so sad to hear that, coming from somebody from outside. Because how can you call yourself an opposition leader? Even if you go in alliance with the government, you sell your birthright to the level of not being able to stand up for justice. And he has been a lawyer, an international lawyer for that matter. To hear him say the things he says today leaves so much to be desired. And that takes us to the last school of thought. Those who believe that there is no way the 43-year-old regime in Yaoundé would leave Issa Tchiroma the stage for him to come and govern and be president. They believe Issa Tchiroma Bakary has no option but to go full force, because they say the regime in Yaoundé, the only thing they hear is violence and bloodshed. And that is why they themselves have been perpetrating it through the different arrests and killings that have been taking place because of minimal protests. And that the regime in Yaoundé is so scared, especially when they remember that in 1984, Issa Tchiroma Bakary was a victim and got arrested and spent almost over 6 years in jail. And therefore, they are scared of revenge because they know what they've done to him before. And also the fact that they know they are guilty of all the things that they've been doing to repress the Cameroonian people. And so this last school of thought believe that the only option is to go full force, and that the people should not relent, but rather use all means of force to push the regime out of office. And they are also hoping that part of the military would break away and try to help them accomplish this mission. So when you hear these three different schools of thought, it leaves you wondering, because Issa Tchiroma Bakary has instead come out and is calling for ghost towns. What runs through your mind? You that are watching from Yaoundé, from Douala, from Ebolova, from Sangmilima, from Garoua, from Maroua, from Tuboro, from London, Toronto, Abuja, Washington, New York, you that are watching even in Italy, in Germany, in Sweden, in Spain, Madrid, everywhere in the world, as a Cameroonian, as an African, or just a lover of democracy, what runs through your mind? Leave a comment below, share the content, share your perspective, and above all, support the movement, because your voice should always matter, and let your voice count. Voices without borders. On to the next one. May God bless Cameroon.